So, today I'm going to talk about something a little different. It might offend some of you because this is an opinion that most comic book fans out there will not really have. But in my opinion, Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, particularly Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, are some of the most overlooked comic book movies out there that don't receive the credit that they do deserve. But before we get into it, I do want to mention that I have a Patreon. So if you want to jump over there and support me, you don't have to. It would be greatly appreciated. So, before you start leaving a comment saying that The Dark Knight and the Nolan Trilogy is beloved amongst everybody, well, not everybody. Just look to comic book fans. Most comic book fans aren't a fan of it, and I actually hated the trilogy up until, I don't know, last week. I sound like a flip-flop or something, but I thought that Nolan's Batman movies sucked because they weren't comic accurate, they didn't pay any attention to the comics, and they brought in new characters and new ideas that had no place anywhere near Batman. After going back and watching Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, I realised I was completely wrong, and if you're a comic book fan, you need to give these movies respect. I just typed up about Nolan Batman into Google and I got recommended this Reddit argument where they were saying that so far, what do you think are the biggest differences between the Nolan verse and the Reeves verse? First of all, Nolan did create a universe and a world. Matt Reeves made one movie. It's not a universe. It's literally ripped off from Seven and The Crow. How many times do I have to say this? Watch Seven and watch The Crow and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's not some original universe with rain and darkness. He literally just copied the movies he liked, which Nolan did also do. He did copy movies and directors that he liked, like Michael Mann with the visuals in The Dark Knight, but he didn't overuse it and the entire film wasn't about that aesthetic. If you come down, you see people getting 1,000 upvotes. Nolan felt like he wanted to put Batman in the real world, while Reeves just wanted to showcase a comic book world in a grounded way. And that just brings me on to my biggest argument. I was one of those people who believed that exact same thing, that Nolan just disregarded the comics and all he wanted to do was make it realistic. When in reality, what these people need to do is go back and read Year One and The Long Halloween, and then also watch Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and you'll see that Nolan's films don't disregard everything comic booky and they go super serious and gritty. Nolan's films are more comic accurate to Batman than Matt Reeves. There, I'm not afraid to say it, that Christopher Nolan's films take more from the original character of Batman than Matt Reeves' film ever did. Look, I was one of these people where I loved Matt Reeves' Batman film when it first came out. I loved that Batman was more of a detective solving these crimes in a rainy, dark city. There was narration and there was an excellent atmosphere in the entire film. But after rewatching The Batman like 2 or 3 times, I realised that it really wasn't that good. Robert Pattinson is probably one of, if not the worst portrayal of Batman and Bruce Wayne on screen. A weak emo freak who goes around listening to Nirvana and he can't even call himself Batman.
I'm Batman. I'm gay!
Are we forgetting that when people are arguing with their entire life for Matt Reeves and how comic book he was, saying that the film was a pulp detective crime mystery? You don't know what a pulp detective is. You don't know what noir is. Have you read any Philip Marlowe, Mike Hammer, Sam Spade novels? Have you watched any classic film noir like The Big Sleep, Murder My Sweet, Out of the Past, Double Indemnity, The Maltese Falcon? I mean, come on. Stop throwing around words that you don't know what they mean. Matt Reeves' Batman film isn't a pulp detective noir story. It goes way further away from Batman than Nolan ever did. Nolan embraced almost everything, like 90% of what Batman is. Christian Bale played Bruce Wayne perfectly. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, Ben Affleck could have been good if he had a proper movie. But Christian Bale, every single scene as Bruce Wayne, walks into a room like James Bond, 2 girls around his arm, and he's buying the building that he's in. That is Bruce Wayne. And then he turns it off immediately, becoming Batman. We see this in The Dark Knight, where he goes into a party for Harvey Dent, acting like a complete douchebag, then goes out, pours out his drink, because that's not who he is. It's the small details like this that truly embody the character of Batman. Just watch what I think is my personal favourite Batman movie, The Mask of the Phantasm, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Bruce Wayne acts like a douchebag, and he has this billionaire playboy persona until he's alone, then the whole facade drops and he's an entire different person. Christian Bale nailed this. His performance, yeah, might be hailed by movie critics, but comic book fans just brush it aside. You can make fun of it all you want, but his Batman voice and presence is better than any other person on screen. Don't come at me with the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton horrible portrayal, super inaccurate of Batman. Michael Keaton doesn't look, act, talk like Batman one bit. They took nothing from the comics. They were just making up stuff that they wanted to do for a Hollywood film. It's the same with Robert Pattinson. His name isn't Batman, it's Vengeance. He has an entirely different suit. He doesn't have a Batmobile anymore. It's like this car that he modified because he's a mechanic now. He's listening to Nirvana and being angsty and getting angry at Alfred. And he doesn't even have a proper comic accurate Batcave like the Nolan films or the animated series. Instead, it's some underground train tunnel where he's listening to grunge like a freak. All of those portrayals are so inaccurate and are nothing like Batman, compared to Batman Begins, which I think is the understated masterpiece of Nolan's trilogy. Yeah, The Dark Knight is an absolute 10 out of 10. Amazing film, great visuals, great portrayal of Bruce Wayne and Batman, a superb villain that has never been matched. Not by Paul Dano's Riddler, not by Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Heath Ledger put in one of the best performances that we've seen in like the last 20 years. Keeping the comic accurate thing of the Joker, where he's still a guy wearing a purple suit, wearing clown makeup with green hair, but he's portrayed in this horrific way, which I believe was copied into the Batman by Matt Reeves with his Riddler character, along with many other things. One thing that all these people are leaving out is that Matt Reeves literally stole so much from Christopher Nolan. Oh, Christopher Nolan's Batman movie only had a blue aesthetic and it was all very high tech. Matt Reeves created a grounded, pulpy detective, orange lighting and rainy streets. This was all from Batman Begins. Around the midpoint of Batman Begins, we get some of the best visuals I've ever seen in a comic book movie. Batman perched up on rooftops, his cape flowing in the wind like he's being drawn by Tim Sale. You can't get much more comic accurate than this. Rain beating down on steam-soaked rooftops and alleyways. Broken down slums where Batman is investigating a mystery. And the whole time, it's inspired by Blade Runner. Now, I might be making this up, but I'm pretty sure I heard that Christopher Nolan, on the set of Batman Begins, made the people who were in charge of the visuals and the production design watch Blade Runner as inspiration. And by God does it show. Blade Runner is one of my favourite films ever made, and watching Batman Begins just recently and seeing some of the same visuals copied into the movie just blew me away. Christian Bale nailed Batman's presence, always perching up on a rooftop or disappearing before somebody can finish their conversation. And when he starts fighting, it's like something straight out of a comic book, ripping people into darkness and up through fire escapes in ways that aren't even possible, but you don't question it the same way you don't question a comic book. Nolan's films have touches of humour all the time that feel like something straight out of a Frank Miller comic. Just read Year One, where in one of the most serious moments where Batman is surrounded in a building by a SWAT team, one of the SWAT team members threatens a cat, and Batman just walks up to him and goes, "You're the one who threatened the cat, right?" and then blows him out through a wall. This exact sequence was copied into Batman Begins, where Batman gets surrounded in a building and has to escape using a sonar technology, bringing the bats from the Batcave all the way through Gotham. It's the same with The Dark Knight, where the entire plot is basically copied from The Long Halloween, probably my personal favourite Batman story. I've also seen people getting annoyed at the fact that Christopher Nolan tried to make Bruce Wayne like James Bond, and as a massive fan of Bond, I don't find any problem in this, because it's very clear that Christopher Nolan probably grew up loving the James Bond movies and then took some elements and as tribute put them in the Batman trilogy. Like in this epic sequence in The Dark Knight, where Batman, overlooking the blue neon cityscape of Hong Kong, extracts a guy out of a building using a Fulton plane system, which is a direct reference to the great Bond movie Thunderball. And it's not just that, with all the gadgets that he has in the film, like the effing tank, you can say that yeah, it's a tank and it's not the original Batmobile. He's trying to make it high tech and he's not being comic accurate. It's still a dude who's driving a tank across rooftops and who throws bat-shaped symbols at people. He's still being accurate to the comics and also keeping it grounded. Another thing that people have a problem with, and that I had a massive problem with, was the character of Rachel, who just isn't from any comic and just showed up in the Nolan trilogy. And for a long time I hated her, and after watching Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, the people who don't like Rachel are idiots who don't know who Batman is. Before you come at me with your stupid hate comment, watch Mask of the Phantasm, one of the most accurate Batman things there is. In the story, there's a love interest for Bruce that isn't from the comics, but is just a woman that Bruce Wayne falls in love with. They don't have to be from the comics. This is a Batman trope. Just read some Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale comics as well to see what I'm talking about. In Batman, a random femme fatale or just female character can show up and fall in love with Bruce Wayne. And if it's done correct, I have no problem with it, and it's being accurate to Batman. I can't be the only one that's sick of seeing Catwoman all the time, especially when she's an insufferable race-swapped bitch, like we saw in Matt Reeves' Batman.
All anyone cares about in this place are these white, privileged assholes.
Now I will say the character of Rachel is way better in Batman Begins than in The Dark Knight. Might have been because the actress was swapped, but I just didn't like her as much as in Batman Begins. So that's another argument debunked. You're angry that Batman has a love interest that isn't exactly from the comics. Well, now go be angry at Mask of the Phantasm and most Batman stories like Year 2, because they all do stuff like that. Batman Begins is some of my favourite imagery ever, showing Batman as this knight of darkness clad in black, perched on rooftops and alleyways and interrogating scumbags just like Batman would. Like the scene where he says, "Swear to me." People make fun of it all the time, but it's actually one of the most accurate and badass things I've ever seen.
No, I swear to God. Swear to me!
The rain beating down on Batman's mask as he's interrogating this scumbag, dropping him from a rooftop and catching him. Something that was done in the Daredevil comic run by Frank Miller. Or the part in Batman Begins where he drops down, grabs Falcone through a window and says, "I'm Batman." You don't get much more Batman and comic booky than that. Robert Pattinson's Batman couldn't even say the words Batman. He was just going around saying, "I'm vengeance," and staring like some autistic dude. So let's just compare. Batman Begins and The Dark Knight have Batman saying badass comic accurate one-liners, acting perfectly as Bruce Wayne and Batman, looking awesome in the suit. Although it might be a high-tech evolved version of it, it still looks like something out of a comic. And he stops the villain, saves the girl, and it's all in a rainy, steam-soaked Gotham. And Matt Reeves' one has gay emo Batman, race-swapped Catwoman who's insufferable, race-swapped Gordon, who Gary Oldman put in a performance that was super accurate to Batman Year 1, instead of whatever we got in the Batman 22. Some black dude with a mustache screaming. "You're not Gordon, pal. Go home." Gary Oldman put in a great performance and you'll never match it. And then you have scenes between the two films that were just ripped, like the nightclub fight scene in The Batman that people praised. It's ripped directly from The Dark Knight. And if you can't see that, then you must be retarded or something. I'm not lying, just compare the scenes side by side. Matt Reeves took it directly. And if you look at the concept art for the Matt Reeves Batman film, it shows him standing up on rooftops, just like Nolan's Batman did. Except he never does that in the film. Robert Pattinson mopes about and doesn't do anything that even resembles Batman in the entirety of the 3 hours. So I don't know about you, you might be caught up in nostalgia and think that Michael Keaton was somehow good as Batman, which he wasn't. Or you might think that gay Robert Pattinson put in a good performance. But as a comic book fan and a Batman fan, I believe that Nolan's Batman is objectively the best. I can look past the changes made trying to make it more grounded and realistic, especially when the films are heavily inspired by Batman Year 1 and The Long Halloween and The Dark Knight Returns. What is Matt Reeves' Batman inspired by? In which comic does Catwoman complain about white privilege? In what Batman comic is the villain like the Riddler an incel who sits on Rumble streams talking about guns and violence and politics? I don't care what anyone says. The new Batman sucks, making the Riddler literally a political instrument, attacking people online who speak differently to the status quo. The Joker might have been a political instrument in The Dark Knight as well, but he wasn't some allegory for people who are right-wing. So just as a last message to put out there, I'm saying that people should probably go back and watch the Nolan Batman movies and take this into account. The movies take inspiration from the comics, and they're some of the best films ever made. Stop reading modern garbage Batman. Stop watching fake noir detective Robert Pattinson, who's actually just some gay dude who listens to Nirvana. And go back and read the great comics and the excellent Nolan movies that are inspired by them. And if you got a problem with any of that, go complain to your boyfriend.